Russia now accuses Kyiv of shelling the Russian town of Shebenka near the border with Ukraine.
Russia-Germany relations hit a new low as Berlin announces the closure of 4 out of 5 Russian consulates on its territory.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen lays out a new plan for EU enlargement, paving the way for the Western Balkans to join the bloc. The EU and US present a united front on China after talks in Sweden, despite differences behind the scenes.
Russia is now accusing the Ukrainian army of shelling the Russian town of Shebekina and the occupied territory of Luhansk. Posting on Telegram, Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said many apartment blocks and private houses have been damaged and cars burned down. 4 people are reportedly injured. In Ukraine's Luhansk region, strikes have killed 5 and injured 20 more, according to the Russian-appointed officials in the occupied territory. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has recorded almost 9,000 deaths and 15,000 civilians injured since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion 15 months ago. The vast majority have been killed by shelling, missiles or airstrikes. The UN report does note that this figure could be much higher, citing data collection problems due to hostilities. That's seconded by the Ukrainian General Prosecutor, who estimates the death toll has reached the 100,000 mark. The Ukrainian government recounted more than 140,000 buildings destroyed during the first year of the invasion.
Since the start of May 2023, Russia has increasingly ceded the initiative and is reacting to Ukrainian action rather than actively progressing towards its own war aims. This is the latest assessment by the UK Defence Ministry. According to its latest intelligence update, during May 2023, Russia has launched 20 nights of one-way attack uncrewed aerial vehicle and cruise missiles attacks deep inside Ukraine. Russia has had little success in its likely aims of neutralizing Ukraine's improved air defenses and destroying Ukrainian counterattack forces. On the ground, it has redeployed security forces to react to partisan attacks inside western Russia. Now, the Institute for the Study of War assesses that the tempo of Russian and Ukrainian offensive operations in the Bakhmut direction remains low. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Russian forces did not conduct offensive operations in the Bakhmut direction on the 30th of May. It is a similar assessment in the south, where Russian forces did not conduct any confirmed ground attacks in the southern axis on the 30th of May. The Ukrainian General Staff and Ukrainian Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar reported that Russian forces are conducting defensive operations in the southern operational direction in Kherson and Zaporizhia regions. The UK Defense Ministry adds operationally Russian commanders are likely attempting to generate reserve forces and position them where they believe a Ukrainian counterattack will occur. However, this has probably been undermined by uncommitted forces instead being sent to fill gaps in the front line around Bakhmut.
Will Sweden finally be joining NATO? Since the country applied for membership, Hungary and above all Turkey have been blocking the accession process. However, Stockholm has responded to Ankara's demands when it comes to the fight against terrorism by agreeing to hand over Kurdish activists to Turkey.
If we only stick to that agreement, Sweden has fulfilled its part of the bargain. And as NATO General Secretary Stoltenberg likes to repeat as soon as he has the opportunity, Sweden is clear for entry, according to the agreement. But, of course, Mr. Erdogan plays a different game.
In January, relations between the two countries deteriorated after a far-right activist burnt a Koran in Sweden.
Sweden cannot be in the hands of Turkey, judging from incident to incident whether Sweden would be a good ally in NATO. Sweden will be a good ally in NATO, a security provider, a trustworthy ally, and that will serve also Turkish security interests.
The United States now seems to be in a position to break the deadlock, provided it makes a move towards Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who was recently re-elected as the country's leader.
Probably the crux of the issue is the F-16 deal, the issue of the transfer or sale of F-16s and upgrade kits to Turkey. That is the crux of the problem, if you ask me. So if there is any progress in that issue, the rest will be sorted out relatively smoothly and easily.
The NATO membership protocols for Sweden and Finland were signed on the 5th of July 2022. However, only Helsinki was able to join the alliance. On the sidelines of the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Oslo on Wednesday, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said he hoped Sweden would join the alliance before the Vilnius summit in July.
The United Nations has appealed to a court in The Hague to significantly expand the convictions of 2 allies of late Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic, to hold them responsible for their involvement in crimes during the Bosnian War. Now in their 70s, both Jovica Stanisic and Franko Simatovic saw their jail time increase from 12 to 15 years for helping to drive out non-Serbs from the areas at the time of the Balkan Wars. Both men remained silent as the judges handed down the extended sentences.
For committing.
The former president's verdict was never reached as he died in his cell in 2006. Milosevic was on trial for alleged crimes against humanities in the former Yugoslav countries during the 90s. Wednesday's ruling brings to an end the longest-running war crimes prosecution and underlines the complexity of successfully proving war crimes in international courts, now amid the backdrop of the war in Ukraine.
Bringing the Western Balkans on board seems to be one of the more urgent goals of the European Union. During a keynote speech at the Globsec 2023 forum in Bratislava, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen presented a 4-point growth plan for the region. The aim, to bring some of the benefits of EU membership to these countries that are still undergoing the long process of joining the bloc.
We finally realize that it is not enough to just wait for our friends outside the Union to move closer to us. It is not enough to say that the door is open. We must also take responsibility to bring the aspiring members of our Union much closer to us. The shockwaves sent by Putin's war of aggression have also reached the 6 Western Balkan countries. But this has only brought us closer together.
Indeed, Russia's invasion of Ukraine seems to mark a turning point in the EU's strategy towards the region that was previously focused on maintaining the status quo. That's according to Judy Dempsey, a senior fellow at Carnegie Europe.
The European Union's strategy towards the Western Balkans has been absolutely miserable. It has been inconsistent. It has been double standards. It has kept the Western Balkan countries in a waiting room since 2004 at the big summit the big EU summit in Salonika in Greece. That's when there was a big optimistic push to integrate the Western Balkans into the EU. And since then, there's been an indifference, an exhaustion, a division by the member states, not quite sure what to do with them.
This new awareness inside the EU mentioned by von der Leyen could be a game changer for the Western Balkans.
The common regional market is crucial to unlock to a certain extent, this is a new approach to the European Union. We do not only ask our partners to take new steps towards us, we also take a big step towards them. Our shared goal is to speed up their journey towards the European Union.
According to the plan, the 6 Western Balkan countries could join the EU's digital single market in areas like e-commerce and cybersecurity, as well as facilitating trade in goods and payments. It's still not clear, though, if this would be enough to satisfy Western Balkan countries and calm the tensions that are currently erupting. The European Union and the United States say they are unified in their approach to dealing with China, despite differences behind the scenes. It's one of the major questions currently looming over EU-US relations. We met in Sweden's Arctic Circle on Wednesday for the 4th Trade and Technology Council aimed at boosting cooperation. Washington has long been calling for a reluctant Brussels to take a tougher stance on Beijing, including calling them out on their alleged anti-competitive behavior. Both sides, however, are presenting a united front.
We all benefit from trade and investment with China, but as opposed to decoupling, we are focused on de-risking. And you've heard the same language coming from leaders on both sides of the Atlantic.
The reality is quite different, though. Within the bloc, opinions on what to do about China vary greatly. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has taken a more hawkish stance on the matter, falling into line with a tougher view from Washington. But some countries, including France, don't necessarily agree with this approach, particularly when it comes to cutting or reducing trade ties.
At this point in time, I think there's still a reluctance to take on the same US line. European countries have export and import interests in China. Many European companies make a lot of money in China. But at the same time, I think there is a recognition in Europe that China will continue to be a big player in the global system. And this US kind of confrontational course of action is seen as problematic for that reason.
Despite differences on China, there are things that the EU and US agree on. This includes developing a joint voluntary code of conduct for artificial intelligence, announced as in the works.
We have different legislative procedures. It will take 2-3 years at best before that would come into effect. And we're talking about a technological acceleration that is beyond belief. And here we think it's really important that citizens can see that democracies can deliver.
Both Brussels and Washington would like to bring all democratic countries on board with the Code of Conduct on AI. Where China fits into this, though, is a question that remains to be seen.